Picture this. Tomorrow you must be at work by 5 a.m. One late arrival and you lose your job. So you set an alarm. Except there is no alarm. No phone. No wall clock. No electricity. You cannot even see the sky. How do you wake up? For most of history, that question shaped every morning. In China, a night watchman crossed dark streets with a lantern and wooden clapper. In industrial Britain, a woman raised a long pole and tapped a second-floor window. Others fired dried peas through blowpipes at sleeping customers. These were real jobs. And they leave one irresistible question. If waking people was a job, who woke the people who woke everyone else? We will answer that. First, we need to understand why anyone needed them. For most of human history, people did not wake at an exact time. They woke with the world. The sky brightened. Birds called. Animals stirred. Human bodies followed the rhythm of daylight. Farmers rose for the fields. Fishermen read the tide. Shepherds followed their animals. The day had a shape and people lived inside it. This was not perfect, but it was usually good enough. Before electric lights, nights were darker and daily routines were more closely tied to sunrise and sunset. People also learned from repetition. If you rise before dawn every day for years, your body becomes surprisingly good at expecting it. Roosters helped. They often crow at the first hint of dawn, before sunrise. For centuries, they served as the countryside's unofficial alarm clock. But a rooster has no customer list. It wakes everyone, and only when morning light arrives. If work starts at 5 on a dark winter morning, the rooster is useless. Usually, that precision did not matter. Life followed daylight, not minutes. Then towns grew and time became public. In medieval Europe, church bells organized the day. They called people to prayer, markets, work, and rest. If you could hear the bell tower from bed, you did not need a clock at home. The important thing was not knowing whether it was exactly 6:03. It was knowing that the first bell had sounded, the market was opening, or work was about to begin. One loud clock could coordinate an entire community. China used a different system with the same idea. Cities divided the night into 5 watches. Night watchmen, called gung fu, walked fixed routes carrying lanterns and striking clappers or gongs. They announced the watch, looked for fires, and kept an eye on the streets. The final watch told early risers that morning was near. But it was not a personal alarm. The watchman announced the hour. Waking up was still your problem. If you slept lightly and expected the signal, it might be enough. If you slept through it, the watchman did not return, climb to your window and try again. His customer was the city, not you. Some people tried to solve that problem with machines. Water clocks had measured time for thousands of years. Clever versions could trigger a whistle, release a weight, or ring a bell when water reached a certain level. The principle was simple. Water moved at a roughly predictable rate. The engineering could be anything but simple. A carefully designed float, lever, or falling weight could turn passing time into sound. Candle clocks were simpler. A thread and small weight were attached to a marked candle. When the flame reached the thread, the weight fell onto a plate. Incense clocks used the same basic trick. As incense burned along a planned path, it could release a scent or trigger a small chime. Ingenious? Yes. Convenient? Not really. Reliable water clocks were expensive. Candles could fall over. Incense changed with humidity and airflow. These devices suited monasteries, courts, and wealthy homes better than ordinary workers. They also had to be prepared before sleep. Forget to fill the water clock, choose the wrong candle, or place it near a draft, and your ingenious alarm became an ingenious excuse for being late. For everyone else, waking on time remained a social problem. Then the Industrial Revolution made lateness expensive. A craftsperson starting 20 minutes late mostly delayed their own work. A factory worker could delay an entire chain of machines and people. Factories answered with clocks, timekeepers, fines, and lost jobs. This was a major change. Time was no longer merely a way to describe the day. It became something employers could measure, sell, and punish. A few minutes could now affect wages, production, and whether a family could pay rent. Mechanical alarm clocks existed, but many working families could not justify buying one instead of food or rent. That gap created one of history's strangest practical professions, the knocker-upper. The job was simple. Knock. Wait. Make sure the customer is awake. From the mid-1800s into the 20th century, knocker-uppers worked before dawn across industrial Britain and Ireland. They carried customer lists and long, lightweight poles. Their streets were quiet and dark. A good knocker-upper had to remember who needed waking at what time and which window belonged to whom. Waking the wrong household was not a good way to keep customers. Ground floor customers were easy. For upper floors, tap, tap, tap. The pole had to strike the correct window firmly enough to wake the customer, but gently enough not to wake the neighbors. For very high windows or narrow alleys, Some knocker-uppers used blowpipes and fired dried peas at the glass. That sounds comic now, but it was practical. A pea was cheap, easy to carry, and loud enough against glass. More importantly, it could reach a window that a pole could not. But making noise was only half the job. The knocker-upper waited until the customer appeared at the window or called back. Leave too soon and the customer might return to sleep. In other words, this was not an alarm clock with legs. It was a small personal service built on trust. The customer paid for confirmation, not merely noise. One well-documented knocker-upper was Mary Smith of Bow, East London. Early 20th century photographs show her carrying a long pole on her rounds. Customers paid a few pence each week. With enough names on her list, it became a living. She was not unusual. In many industrial towns, knocker-uppers were as ordinary and necessary as postal workers. The profession survived well into the 20th century. It faded only as affordable alarm clocks, changing work patterns, and wider access to reliable timekeeping made a human wake-up service unnecessary. Now the question: who woke the knocker-upper? There was no single answer. Some never slept through the whole night. They began rounds at 2, 3, or 4 in the morning and slept in shorter stretches during the day. Years of routine trained their body clocks. Some woke each other. A worker on an earlier route might tap a colleague's window while passing. The system ran on informal cooperation. Others relied on the old signals: the sky, birds, habit, and the powerful knowledge that if they overslept, many other people would be late. So the answer is less magical than the question, but more interesting. The people who woke the city were supported by routines, neighbors, and other workers. Even the human alarm clock depended on a human system. That is the strange truth. Before alarms became cheap and personal, waking up was not merely an individual task. It depended on nature, public bells, night watchmen, machines, neighbors, and sometimes a woman firing peas at your window. The alarm clock changed more than how we wake. It changed what being on time meant and quietly replaced an entire human system. Today, one device tells us the hour, wakes us, checks the weather, and warns us about traffic. That convenience hides how many separate people and systems once did the same work. So tomorrow, when your phone buzzes and you press snooze, spare a thought for Mary Smith standing outside in the cold, waiting for proof that you are awake. She would not have been impressed.